we asked was, will the voter get confused while picking Lok Sabha and Assembly candidates? This is something to remember that's once again been opined by the critics of One Nation, One Election. And the response to this was 39% respondents believed that yes, it is going to lead to some sort of confusion, that there is clearly not going to be an overall demarcation between the candidates that are in fray as far as national elections are concerned vis-a-vis the state elections. 49% believe that there's not going to be any confusion as far as the candidates are concerned. The next question that we asked our respondents was, will One Nation, One Election help governments make better policy decisions? Now again, this question becomes very critical, because do remember, the whole idea of One Nation, One Election revolves around the fact that so much time goes into preparing for elections, both Lok Sabha and the several state elections, that it leads to policy paralysis. It leads to delay in implementation of some key policies that are essential in the country's growth. So yes, 71% said yes, 18% said no, it's not really going to ensure that the government makes better policy going forward, and 11% people had still not made up their mind. So they were not quite sure of what their take on this is. The next question that we asked, and this is, we're putting out stats for the first time, do you think voting on the same day for national and state elections can confuse the voter? This once again is a concern that's been put forth by many regional political players. They've said that there's going to essentially be a concern, and hence we continue to oppose One Nation, One Election and the whole idea. 36% respondents said yes, it may lead to some sort of confusion if voting for the national polls, the Lok Sabha and the Vidhan Sabha, take place on the same day. It's going to lead to confusion in the minds of the voter. 56% people responded while saying no, it's not going to lead to any confusion for the voter. I want to go across to my colleague Payal Mehta joining us with more details. Payal, a very important question. Because that's one thing, like I said, that's been opined by the critics of One Nation, One Election. Those who've constantly spoken against it say that this is definitely going to lead to confusion, but 56% people have rejected that idea.
Of course, the first meeting of the One Country, One Election has just gotten over. The JPC meeting has just gotten over. And a variety of people, in fact, variety of members of parliament from across the party lines spoke about it. Most of the opposition MPs felt that the government was trying to, in fact, bring in this as a mode so that they can actually lead this into presidential style of election. And it will only help the national parties and not help the regional parties. It's going to reduce their impact, as much as more and more, in fact, in the coming times is what they've been arguing. Also, how does the government really justify the expenses that they're talking about? Curbing of expenses. Priyanka Gandhi Vadra made a very valid point where she essentially said that the report that was submitted to the committee today and the presentation that was made by the officials of the Ministry of Law and Justice spoke about the fact that such, expenses that were being spoken about were only pre-2004 and after 2004 when the EVMs were brought in, after which anyways there was been a drastic change in the expenses of elections. So how is it that they're justifying this as well? And what is the argument that the government wants to give about, the EVMs as well? So obviously, political parties, including the BJP, did speak in support. JDU also said that, EVMs are most important because they understand what booth rigging really wants in response to, the YSRCP saying that if they will completely support the bill only if there is, ballot paper which is being brought out to conduct elections as well. So this is just the first meeting. Already you can see a bit of fireworks between the opposition and the ruling side, with arguments taking place, questions being asked of the Ministry of Law and Justice. In fact, the Law and Justice Ministry has given them a documentation which goes into 22 volumes and goes into 18,000 pages for them to look into the details. These are, of course, the detailed report of the Ramnath Kovind Committee, the history, the reference of the bill, how it is passed through all these years and what has really been transpired. And it runs into a big suitcase that we've been able to see. And it runs into about 52 kgs in terms of the weight of the documentation that the MPs have been asked to go along with them.
Oh yes, Payal, stay on with us. I want to quickly bring in Aman Sharma and Pallavi Ghosh into the conversation as well. Aman, this is in continuation with the concerns that have been raised by many in the opposition, that one nation, one election could essentially mean a stronger political mandate for the ruling party or the ruling coalition. So if there are at least, for 56% people who say that it's not going to lead to any confusion, voting on the same day for national and state elections is not going to lead to any confusion, it answers that question as well, isn't it?
Well, Kritswin, if we look at history, till 1967, we had one nation, one election in the country. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru was then the Prime Minister, and Congress was in power. But then, the BJP always, after that, we saw the elections being disrupted. What the BJP is essentially saying is that look at the example of Delhi. Delhi is going to poll now. For 1 month, there will be model code of conduct. Delhi was under model code of conduct for 2 months last year during the Lok Sabha election. So within a year, 3 months, no work is happening in Delhi because the model code of conduct is on. If one nation, one election is held, this frequent disruption to developmental program, infrastructural programs stops. Also, what the government is making a very clear case that nothing is happening till 2029. After 2029, whichever state polls, for example, if a state polls in 2030, it only gets a 4-year term till 2034. If a state polls in 2032, it gets a 2-year term. After 2034, everybody gets the same term and everything is synchronized. That is what the center's claim is. Voter is very intelligent. The center is also saying that currently also 3 states at least poll alongside the Lok Sabha elections. We have Odisha, we have Andhra Pradesh who poll alongside the Lok Sabha. We have Delhi, which is polling just about 6-8 months after the Lok Sabha. Haryana, Maharashtra just polled a few months after the Lok Sabha, and 3 states earlier, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh, just polled 3 to 4 months before the Lok Sabha election. So anyways, people are very intelligent. They may vote for Mr. Modi in the center when it comes to Delhi, but vote for Mr. Kejriwal when it comes to the state government. And there are 2 EVMs placed and people can press their respective parties. So people are very intelligent to differentiate between national and local issues. But that said, obviously what you are saying is also has a very valid point. The opposition parties, especially the regional parties, feel that if there is one nation, one election, how will they compete with the likes of maybe the BJP and even the Congress, which have a much bigger cadre, which have much more money power also. They have charismatic big pan-India leaders like Mr. Narendra Modi. The regional parties stand to lose out. For example, the Samajwadi Party will have to fight 400 plus seats in Assembly, 80 plus seats in the Lok Sabha all together. Do they have the cadre, the money power, the wherewithal to fight 2 elections together? So that is what the regional parties, and the protest also, Kritswin, is coming mainly from the regional parties. I would say they are vociferous against it. SP, RLD, BRS, BJD. These are the parties which are objecting to it, and the government has a tough task to get this bill passed because you need a 2/3 majority. You need 360 plus MPs in the Lok Sabha. Even a simple majority of 272 could not be hit when the bill was introduced. So obviously the back is up to the wall of the government. Government will have to do a real convincing act with all the parties. We saw in the JPC meeting today, the government is trying to convince the party that this is a good idea, but parties are not expected to come on board. This is not like the the Article 370 case where all the many from the opposition jumped these barriers and supported the government in the name of national unity, national cause. 370 had that national fervor. This bill does not have that. In fact, all the opposition we are finding united on one side on this particular legislation.
Okay, all right, Aman, many thanks for that important perspective. I want to bring in Pallavi as well. Pallavi, where does this concern come in the minds of the opposition then, that this in all likelihood could confuse the voter? Is it also about national issues being given more prominence or perhaps reflecting more aggressively in the minds of the voter?
Well, I mean, I think examples and to be very brief on this, if you look at example of Odisha and Andhra Pradesh, which also see simultaneous polls, and it's not that the people don't understand the difference. I mean, you go to a polling booth and when you're pressing the button, you know who you're going to be voting for and what could be the impact of it. I mean, in Odisha is the best case. I mean, it's only this time round that we saw that the BJP came to power in Odisha, but it's not because people were confused. It's because there was a narrative on the ground which was going against the BJP. There was a real fear factor among the local people that will Pandian take over, will Naveen Patnaik completely fade away. Therefore, they decided let's give the BJP a chance. So I think when the opposition party starts talking about confusion among the voters, they deeply underestimate the intelligence of our voters. I mean, this is the public, ye public sab janti hai, and they've always voted with a great deal of intelligence. And and therefore, when I don't think this whole simultaneous votes confusing the people is a narrative which can go very far. Having said that, it's been registered on the COVID panel also by opposition parties like the TMC, the Congress and all of them, that this is first going to tinker with the federal structure. That is, when you want to implement ONOP, will you cut short the legitimate time or tenure of a state government? Suppose I've just been voted to power in a year's time and I have 4 more years to go. Will you cut short, and how fair is that? That is one. And second, will the BJP, their accusation, will the BJP, which controls and dictates the election commission, will also start dictating the way the results should go? So these are fears which are being voiced by the opposition parties, and that's precisely